Welcome to Fixate Today, Ray Matters. Over the course of the deep dive we've done on the case of Mica Francis over on our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, we've seen multiple instances of some people evading justice for breaking the law, as well as some people being completely dismissed by law enforcement. JP found that he could also use legal documents and court dates to bully people he wanted to control or intimidate. Let's talk about the decades of questionable police involvement and people surrounding Mica and her estranged husband, John Paul Miller. First, let's look at how law enforcement has allowed JP and the people in his inner circle to get away with bad behavior for so long. JP has a pattern of filing police reports and calling 911 when he feels like his back is against the wall. We know that JP's church, Solid Rock Church, has had members of law enforcement as congregants throughout its history. But before launching Solid Rock, JP was raised seeing his father skirt accountability. There have been multiple fires linked to Reginald Wayne Miller's churches. There's a paper trail around Wayne, which outlines inappropriate behavior with students at his Bible colleges, laid out by his ex-wife in their divorce proceedings, as well as in police reports. Wayne even filed a lawsuit against a news agency, but eventually dropped it. JP seems to have learned how to use litigation and threats of court proceedings as bullying tactics from his father. JP's son Logan seems to be using similar tactics during his own divorce, having his own arrests for domestic assault on his record. In 2006, Wayne was arrested for exposing himself to an undercover police officer. After pleading guilty and some sort of pre-trial intervention, this charge was expunged from Wayne's record. In 2014, Wayne again pleaded guilty, but this time to forcing 16 foreign exchange students to work for him and his Bible college. The students had their visas and passports taken and were forced to work for little or no pay, with Wayne threatening their immigration status. Wayne got a slap on the wrist for this. While he did serve some prison time, the consequences he faced were allowed to end early. With this context, we must consider how JP saw his father handle his own misdeeds. Did he see how his father was able to use his title as pastor to his own advantage and lead law enforcement to believe that a man of God could turn his life around? Was JP able to see how this title could bring him a bit more freedom? It seems that the special police badge JP was given by law enforcement with the word pastor on it, specifically to show during traffic stops, would confirm this feeling of being above the law. Let's talk about JP's history with the police. In 1998, JP was arrested after running over a woman with his car when he was 19 years old. He pleaded guilty and received a suspended sentence and probation. This offense was officially pardoned in October 2021 because JP changed his character to fit his pastor persona. He was given his right to vote, as well as his right to acquire firearms back. JP was, again, found guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and causing property damage. No consequences seem to have come of that. 2 years later, JP was, once again, charged with domestic assault. By 2015, JP's first wife, Allison, laid out JP's behavior in her divorce filing, suggesting that JP uses law enforcement and the courts as a means of manipulation and control. In 2016, there are numerous reports filed by Allison laying out stalking behavior, including JP moving into the house across the street from her and shining a green light into her windows, attempts to kill a tree that was blocking his view of her house, and regularly showing up at her work and home. In an affidavit, JP's ex-wife says that she was dismissed when she sought help from the police, including when she attempted to report JP's inappropriate behavior with underage girls at his church, being told that his position as a pastor and the fact that they were in the middle of a divorce would make her account uncredible. JP's behavior continued to escalate throughout 2022, with JP threatening harm in phone calls and text messages to Mica and her family, while stating to responding officers that he would speak to an officer who was superior to them to get these issues straightened out. After this, we see JP using falsified or coerced legal documents in an attempt to intimidate Micah to bend to his will. Some of JP's buddies also have their own criminal records, including having a sex offender on staff at Solid Rock Church. Another high-ranking Solid Rock Church staff member has been convicted of stealing a large sum of money from a former job. This person was the one who called 911 to report Micah's theft from Solid Rock's Dare to Care Ministry Fund at the behest of JP. This year, a church member sprayed protesters at Solid Rock Church with a sprinkler and was charged with assault. A warrant was issued, but the gentleman was allowed to turn himself in and not be arrested after a Sunday service due to his health. Speaking of protesters, a slew of 911 calls from Solid Rock Church have been happening, and it seems that police are keeping protesters from getting too close to the church more and more each week. Protesters, potential witnesses, and content creators have reported getting threatening text messages from fake numbers throughout the summer. We've also seen evidence that JP is using church funds to attempt to pay people to dig up dirt on content creators. He has also, through his attorney, sent a few misspelled and not legally binding cease and desist letters since people began speaking out against him. I only hope we'll get ours any day now. Police seem to be aware of these things, but nothing has gone forward to prevent this behavior from JP. Now that we've seen the pattern that JP has learned of being able to use his position of power in the community to get away with just about anything, let's look at how Micah was treated by law enforcement when she was reaching out for help. A series of 911 calls were released recently that showed Micah attempting to get help and protection from January and February 2024. In each call, Micah is calm, well-spoken, and even-tempered. She is clear and concise in what she needs from the police, which is simply to get her belongings back from her estranged husband and for them to keep him from contacting her. In each call, the dispatchers seem confused or unsure how to help, bordering on annoyed that they have to deal with a marital spat. Even when Micah reported incidents of her tires being slashed, GPS trackers on her vehicles, damage to her property, and a nude photo of her that was posted to social media, law enforcement did not help her. She was told her property was considered, quote, marital property, no way of being able to figure out who put the tire deflation devices or the GPS trackers on her car, and that because a nipple was blurred in the posted topless photo, it wasn't considered illegal, and they couldn't do anything. Micah repeatedly told law enforcement that JP was behaving inappropriately with minors, and no investigation was done, just like when Allison reported the same thing. Micah, understandably, felt that she was not able to escape if she couldn't be protected by the police. In contrast, JP's 911 calls are often treated quite differently. Dispatchers tended to cuddle him and try to calm him down. While Micah's calls were calm and well-spoken, JP's calls were frantic and panicked. JP has learned that calling police leads to reports, and reports can be used against people. A month before Micah's death, JP reported her and her family to the police for stalking and harassing him. After Micah's death, the information on her medical examiner's report all came from JP, coloring the narrative of the investigation. Attempts at using law for his own benefit have continued since the loss of Micah. JP attempted to make entry into her apartment and called 911 when the property owner wouldn't let him in. Thankfully, he wasn't allowed to enter her home. Police have been at Solid Rock Church frequently, often with canine units on the scene, yet also for things as simple as a woman on the property trying to find her lost dog. We do need to remember that while JP hasn't been charged with anything, and Micah's family has settled with him and will not seek any civil litigation, he is still being investigated. There are national agencies that may be actively pursuing a case involving JP that the loss of Micah may have been the catalyst for the investigation. Perhaps the lack of police involvement right now is because local authorities' hands are tied due to the involvement of other organizations. We know Micah contacted the IRS in the week before her death. We also know that the FBI has contacted a number of potential witnesses surrounding JP. At this point, we could even consider the involvement of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. On the other hand, we also know that Horry County has had a history of corruption in its past, including seized evidence going missing while in police custody. What is clear is that when Micah reached out for help, law enforcement was missing the entire picture. They were taking each event individually instead of piecing together JP's pattern of behavior by simply looking at the paper trail of reports. Then comes the difficult waters to navigate of whether the individual events the police were responding to were either a legal or a civil matter. If police had connected the dots, they would have possibly seen Micah's calls for help as a legal matter. But because reports weren't connected, law enforcement kept telling Micah that her problem was a civil one, and they were unable to help. Until we have answers about what and who is being investigated, we are left wondering what is happening in this case. How will law enforcement, local and national, move forward and make sure people are held accountable? Will Micah, and potentially many, many others, get justice? Thanks for joining us. For more information, check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, and we'll talk to you guys next time.